After the Sclane timeline, the Extraverse is the most popular and well-known part of the franchise. It was also the least accessible one for a long time. Not only did Triple C get translated just recently, but the first two games of the series are for an outdated console I can't imagine many people being passionate about, with a type of gameplay a lot of people are not into. Let me rephrase that. With a kind of rock paper scissors RNG gameplay many people hate. Also, the anime doesn't exist. I've been wanting to do a Fate series deep dive documentary for a while, but since for doing that I'd need to consume so much media that I would become the embodiment of gluttony itself, and waste one whole year trying to experience all the garbage you're seeing on the screen right now, I might as well get something out of my immediate suffering. And I decided to start with these two big boys, the FGO game and the Extraverse. So enough chit chat, let's actually see what Nosu cooked with Extra. Fate Extra's main appeals are certainly its story, world building, and characters. Right off the bat, the setting is much different from the usual Holy Grail Wars. What Extra brought to the table in terms of world building was unique and interesting enough to make me want to talk to every NPC so I can wring out all the details of this new world. Not that I even remember half of the shit Nosu came up with for his story, but it was an interesting journey regardless of whether or not I can pass the annual world building PhD exam the Fate fandom is obsessed with. Instead of the glorified battle royale of the other Fate entries, we now have a glorified tournament arc. And yes, I hate it when people call it that. And for this tournament of actually 128 masters. Damn, that's a lot. There comes an integral part of the game which I would say is decently implemented between the gameplay and the story: information gathering. The more you know about the opponent's servants, the more of their moves you can see and predict. So even people who don't care about the story and are here for the game itself, which are an endangered species by the way, have a reason to search for information about the new opponent. And I gotta say, many of them are decent servants. The ways you get the information are also varied enough to not get you bored too soon, like doing challenges, searching the library, talking with NPCs, finding clues in the arena, and other stuff. Considering the short screen time many of these servants get, some of them not even having dialogues cause the berserker shtick, and some not having anything valuable to say because for some reason, the fourth opponent sucks in both routes. The information you get and slowly try to piece together the identity of the servant in question is actually quite fun. If you're not me and didn't play FGO before Extra, which spoils all the identities, which took a grand chunk of suspense out of the experience. FGO makes sure to spoil the identities of every enemy servant you face in Extra before ending the singularities, except the 4 servants. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, the servants. Fortunately, even if you don't know the servant's identity yourself, the game itself will reveal it to you when you get all 3 pieces of information in the week. That little canter thingy on the right. So you don't get disadvantage in the boss fights just because you slept during history class. The information gathering system, while simple, works quite well in this setting. You can get to know the characters better without the game ruining the pacing by info dumping everything in a short time span. Foreshadowing. And it's optional too, which can be both good and bad depending on the character in question. Like freaking Lu Bu doesn't say jack, leaving the Matrix to do all the heavy lifting. I mean, it doesn't do a terrible job at that, it makes you understand what an OP cool servant Lu Bu is by describing his exploits and how he was such a legendary figure in life that he can be summoned in 5 of the 7 classes, which is a rare and outstanding feat. But when it comes to handling the character himself, it's harder to get by just from the Matrix. Like, what's the traitor shtick exactly? I don't get why he has a knack for stabbing people in the back. Or is that just some kind of misinformation since we've never seen him betray anyone? And he doesn't talk at all, so it's not like we can just ask him. This issue mostly surfaces in the servants which have little to say and almost nothing is done with them in the 7-day time span they get. Like Lu Bu and Vlad, between which Lu Bu is the better of the two. I don't think it's controversial to say that Little Ronnie is a trash, and that this Vlad is a far inferior and now even unnecessary character since the Apocrypha version is just better, in every way. His dialogues certainly don't only consist of never-ending simping for a clown of all things, that's for sure. I know the extra Vlad is supposed to be more Dracula and less Vlad the Impaler, but he's an insult to Dracula as well. And the Vlad portion of the story reveals another shtick I really don't like about Extra. How it frames certain characters or points. Okay, bear with me, this guy is practically a tragic hero whose legacy distorted him to be more depicted as a monster just because he was too good at what he did. He killed enemy soldiers just like every other warring period ruler, with the difference that he made forests out of them. Yeah, that's what. And ruling with fear over the nobility ultimately led to his downfall. Sure, he wasn't a good guy or anything, and no one pretends that he was. He did his own fair share of horrendous things as well, as if other heroes' asses are more clean. But definitely compared to this, like, you're shitting me, right? You're shitting me! Between the ruler who killed in war just like every other ruler and reigned kinda tyrannically just like many other rulers, one of which is your motherfucking servant, and some random clown lady who eats people because why not? You think the ruler guy is more deserving of hell. What the Nasu? What mushroom are you high on? Treating the guy like a monster by making him an unbearable moron in the story doesn't sit well with me. If this guy is a monster, color my ass impressed. I guess we should consider everyone a monster then. Vlad's Matrix information and the idiot we see in the story seem like completely different people, making me question why the hell do we need this unnecessary addition to the lore at all? Is it a case of ludonarrative dissonance or what? Okay, back to the good stuff again. Having a version of Shinji who is just a disgusting jackass but not that much of a bad guy, just an insecure child wanting to win what he thinks is prize money, is quite a refreshing take. While I'm not a big fan of how the story throws out the boo-hoo, I'm just 8 years old, literally at his death scene, which makes not Rin Tosaka look more like an emotionally unintelligent bitch by saying bullshit about Shinji's death, like always, about how he should have known better. He's 8-bit, and if you don't know jack about him, then just don't say jack about him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. And I can't believe I defended Shinji of all people. While I do have my fair share of problems with how the story treats Shinji's portion, like Shinji's friend shtick not working and being annoying as hell, I'm overall okay with it. Here he is only a narcissistic brat and not the worst kind of garbage ever. My academic psychological assessment is that maybe not having a reminder of your worthlessness hanging above your head since childhood can really help with your mental health. Who could have guessed? Francis Drake is like okay. I like the Okeanos portrayal more. She was more fun and fleshed out there. It's as if she barely has anything to do here besides being a mom to Shinji and showcasing a little of her lifestyle. In Okeanos, she has more to do. She's an active character and affects the character arc of one of the main cast. I know it's not exactly Extra's fault, it's her first debut and all, and what I'm saying is dependent on reading FGO first, but even then I think there could be more to her. And I can't believe I just complimented that shitty gacha game. And the first 5 Midas singularities to boot. Man, what the fuck has happened to me now? Oh, also Extra implies Drake might be Queen Elizabeth. Whether it's supposed to be retconned or refuted in FGO or not, I have no idea. I just thought I should mention it so that no one would say I forgot about it. I don't know what the hell happened. The second and third fights are a great peak of the story in my opinion. I like Dawn and Robin's relationship and dynamic. I like Robin as well, he's a solid character, and setting him as the servant of Dawn, who is prioritizing his ideals and conscience above pure benefit despite seeing the merit in Robin's approach is quite touching. Also, this guy's motive is reviving his wife, which is a big plus. I like people who appreciate their family more than anything. There seems to be a deep conflict and regret over his work as a knight and soldier, which caused him to lose a lot of time he could have spent with his wife. And even at the end, him not being too sure about whether he spent his life doing the best he should have is, while tragic, quite bittersweet as well. And since he has Robin to bounce off his stick-up-the-ass demeanor and attitude, the scenes with him are mostly unbiased, unlike some parts. Dawn acting as a father figure to Hakuno, while slightly rushed, is also quite well done. Considering the time they get, I'd say Robin and Dawn are the best master and servant pair among the side characters. The next pair are also a very good one. Alice's innocent and childish demeanor is quite endearing, even though it's uncomfortably f***ed up as well. Her parallels with Hakuno are well set up for the eventual reveal of Hakuno's identity without being too on the nose. Nursery Rhyme's identity mystery might be quite intriguing as well, if you didn't get yourself spoiled already, like someone. It misleads the audience quite naturally with first setting up the giant red thingy as a servant, which I doubt many people would think is a servant, and then focusing on Nursery Rhyme with the Alice in Wonderland imagery to convey that she's Alice from the book. Overall, I like them as well. And no, it's not my Moe meter rising up that makes me say that. Gosh, they're so cute. What's Fate's obsession with deadly lollies anyway? Not that I'm complaining. Gato... You barely learn anything about him until the elevator scene, and even what you get there isn't much to make him interesting. Though I have heard that he will be a better character in Triple C, but that remains to be seen. His most defining feature for now is being an annoying loudmouth idiot. He's not as bad as Little Ronnie, sure, but is that the standard we want to set? Him simping for Arcuate is funny though, I give him that. Not Kuzuki is also an interesting master. Most of his characters is explored during 7th week though, which makes his own week until the eventual elevator scene quite a nothing experience where you barely learn anything new about him. This is a thing in some other weeks as well, mainly Lubu, Gato, and kinda Ku's weeks. Though the last one mostly is a walking Easter egg and his actual story is somewhere else, so I can partially excuse this one. Julius's dialogues in the elevator are among the most interesting though, and while eventually peeling back the layers can give a kinda overused trope and cliche to the player, I think it works in this context. Just like how different characters are motivated by different things, Hakuno, an artificial copy of a human, is mainly motivated by her newfound purpose in her companions. Julius is almost the same, being the unneeded son of a wealthy and powerful family who practically has no reason to exist but finds purpose in trying to protect the son of a woman who once showed him love. Rather than being able to move on, which I don't think would have been ideal either, he chooses to cling to the only affection he has ever felt and received. It makes a good contrast between Hakuno and Julius by tying together both their motives in the form of the affection they received in their otherwise empty lives, which makes Julius trying to reject the system and not die after failing in his fight even more touching. By rejecting the system, he becomes an anomaly like Hakuno. Somehow, between the two brothers, the one who gets killed sooner seems like a more fitting foil to the protagonist than the one who was built up as the last boss. Well, if we don't count the actual last boss, but we'll talk about him when we get to it. Li Shuen, however, he exists? I'd say he's one of the least interesting servants. He also fights for battle with no explicit goal in mind and is, all in all, a very shallow repeat version of the fight-obsessed warrior trope. There's nothing insulting or downright awful about him, he's just such a nothing character except his kinda softer nature compared to Julius and how he doesn't kill Hakuno and her servant instantly, and his respectful nature in fights which are themselves standard tropes of his archetype. And this is the archetype I like. Now we get to the blonde Oji-sama cosplaying as a real king. From the start, Leo was built up as the final opponent Hakuno would face, and I'd say the story did a pretty good job at that. Extra reveals Leo's motives and personality over time, and shows the deep-seated self-entitlement he has over becoming a king. Thematically, he is a good fit for being the antagonist. His utopia consists of a stagnant society with no room for anything outside the narrow scope of whatever his pompous ass says so, and the story argues such a life like sheep being herded isn't really the best or even an option. It does it quite reasonably, and you can understand where Leo is coming from. He sees himself as the messiah who would save everyone and give their lives or deaths meaning. Everything has meaning not in of itself, but by how much it fits with Leo's ideals and utopia. And funnily enough, his ideal might not even be anything more than a tool for disgusting landowners and plutocrats to amass influence and wealth and help them keep it while growing their power. Wait, that's exactly where the hell the problem lies, isn't it? While Extra does a fine job exploring Leo's character, it practically forgets the reason for Leo coming to the Mooncell Holy Grail War, the Harvey family. Yes, the story sometimes shows us glimpses of what the Harveys are, a group of assholes banded together by money and power who are not above killing innocent people and experimenting, whatever the hell that means, because the story didn't see it as something important to actually be explained rather than just alluded to, on a child, their own child. But that's different from actually delving into who the Harveys are. Most of the time when Extra tries to delve into the Harveys, it's with the intention of demonizing them, which I already said I hate when Extra does that, and to show and partially explain the Harvey brothers' actions. The same old, the environment sucked, therefore the characters are like this. Which, if I want to exemplify my problem, it's as if the Harveys are the Zoken of Extra, but this Zoken is only alluded to and barely has anything going for him than a thematic plot device. Imagine a Stay Night Deviant, but without Zoken being there. Extra does a fine job of exploring Leo's character itself and his ideals as a good antithesis to Hakuno's, but it fumbles quite a bit when it comes to showing his backstory or the Harveys. Gawain isn't a bad character in Extra, but he's certainly not the most well-written either. He does what he does pretty much okay and works well in the role he's been given. You can kinda understand his regrets at his past mistakes, or you could have if he wasn't a moron, and his misguided attempts in serving his new king is touching enough. I don't have much to say about him since I want to keep it for the FGO video and I don't want to just repeat myself here. But my god, this guy is the most unbearable, self-righteous asshole in the whole series. What the f is Saber seeing him? Or was this idiot in the round table just because of favoritism since he's Artoria's nephew? You either have a functional brain or functional morals, both would be ideal. Gawain has neither. Anyway, Fate Extra's final boss is quite a well set up character with thematically coherent motives and well explored Hello? Huh? What do you mean Lo isn't the final boss? The game hasn't ended yet? The final boss is in the epilogue? Who the hell is that? You mean that random phantasm that comes and goes in one scene? That? Okay, twice Pinkman. Okay, twice Peaceman. Like I said before, I have my own fair share of problems with that duct tape ending of Extra, so I'll start with some positives. I can understand why Twice would be in the story from a thematic standpoint. Setting up Hakuno to grow as a person and find reasons for living and progressing towards a better future, the thesis, would certainly grant the possible proposition of there being a character or group that represents conservatism and stagnancy. And we know how much Japanese authors hate that, hey Miyazaki? Basically the antithesis. Usually in these types of stories, the goal is to reach a synthesis between the thesis and antithesis. So having a version of the protagonist's ideals and lifestyle gone to the extreme as the opposing test to get across the meaning is quite a good idea. A fitting end to Extra, I would even say. Seeing how Twice and Hakuno took different lessons from the Mooncell Ho, I am not saying that again. Hakuno saw great pain, death and destruction in the war and ultimately rejected such a terrible system while understanding that's not going on with your dreams and goals, and living as a sheep can hardly be a life worth living. Almost every opponent he faced in the war had a dream they were fighting for and wanted to make things better, either for themselves or for someone they cared about, or maybe even for everyone. Twice takes that to the extreme. Despite hating and despising war, his experiences shape him into a man who does almost anything in the name of progress, even if he doesn't like it. He sees a stagnant, dead world with no future in it and can't get himself to ignore it. So he comes to the conclusion that we're better off killing and fighting with each other so that the aftermath of that can become great progress and a liberation from the world's stagnation. Now, me telling him to mind his own business and get a life outside of meddling with a world that has nothing to do with him anymore aside, this guy practically comes out of Nasu's ass. I mean, Sporocarp. Other than the here and there references of, hey, Hakuno, do you know Twice Peaceman? You know, the guy who is going to be mentioned by me nonchalantly 1 or 2 times and cease to be relevant until the last fight? Twice barely has any presence or impact on the story until this exact moment. And that's why we get the longest info dump of Extra trying to understand who the hell this new big bad is. Seriously, it's as if 2 or 3 matrix worth of information has been just crammed into the last part, and even that is barely coherent. I played this game 3 times and I still don't get everything they said about this guy. An opposing ideal is something you build up in the course of the story, and a character should be explored and developed in the course of that story alongside the others with character interactions and slow reveals to make it a natural progress. None of that applies to Twice. He is a segmented piece of the story barely connected to anything or anyone else in it. It's as if there's extra the story and there's whatever the hell this out of left field guy is. You barely get to know Twice or understand him because just as you get to the info dump and try to make sense of all the shit crammed into it, suddenly you have to just kill the guy and be done with it. And it doesn't help him that he's one of the less interesting Type Moon antagonists too. And the screen time problem harms Twice's servant even more than Twice himself. Buddha, Savior, has little more than 1 or 2 paragraphs worth of character. He comes, you defeat him, and that's that. Barely anything about him is revealed or explained or explored besides this 1 paragraph. Seriously, that's all he is! Just out of nowhere, here's a new servant class, he's the final boss, now you should just defeat him. And the ending isn't much better either. You would think the Mooncell would actually know who its NPCs are if it wants to delete them in case of becoming anomalies or deleting anomalies in general. Because certainly that didn't come out of nowhere, since none of the administrators of the war had any problem with either Twice or Hakuno, and the anomaly gets deleted reveal certainly didn't come out at the last minute. But apparently, no! Because this supercomputer is incompetent as hell when we need it to be. Why does it even need contact with the core aka Grail to consider these 2 anomalies, and if not, it just doesn't do anything, letting anomalies like Twice run wild, killing god knows how many of the winning masters, and the Mooncell either doesn't notice or doesn't care. If it doesn't care about the anomalies, then why does it suddenly care when they want to make a wish even though they earned the right to a wish per the war's own rules? If it doesn't care, what difference is there for the Mooncell between humans wishing to the Grail and non-humans wishing to the Grail? If it does care, why doesn't it do anything when an anomaly sweeps the floor with the other candidates, walks free for almost 2 months in the Seraph, or worse, stays near the core, doing god knows what, alongside killing other masters for god knows how long? There are systems, there are bad systems, and then there's whatever the Mooncell is supposed to be. And if it just doesn't notice, then I guess it's just more incompetent than Windows Defender. And even setting all that aside, I'm not even fine with whatever the hell is going on in Hakuno's head. I thought the story was about self-discovery and self-improvement, progress towards a better future, despite the odds, and finding meaning in an empty life. Not the world needs saving at the last minute, so our virtuous protagonist sacrifices herself to dismantle this oppressive system, and tries to ease the horrors of war in the normal world some mad villain is responsible for. Hakuno has been killing other people for a while, a long portion of that being when she didn't have any other reason for fighting besides her sense of awareness and cognition and refusal to just let it end and die. Now all of that doesn't matter because our virtuous hero is going to save the day by dismantling the Grail, something that costs her even more than before, and saving the world alongside with it. Numbers don't randomly turn certain propositions from one side to the other. Hakuno herself has nothing to do with the real world at all since she is not human. She is not a biological organism, and she herself never was, regardless of what the original human might have been. She has no attachment to the world. She barely has any reason to dismantle the Grail either, when that would practically cost her the whole reason she was fighting before. But suddenly she's more inclined towards the benefit of others than herself, when before she was killing others to survive. At the start, the question of whether or not she should just die and forfeit the fight to other people was answered, "No, I'm gonna fight and live." Now it's suddenly, "Nope, I guess I'm not. I'm just gonna die." it saves other people the trouble of this war. What the hell is that? Then why did you continue fighting in the first place? It's not the same situation as her saving Ronnie or Rin. In that case, she saw the potential of helping someone despite having taken so many lives, despite everything. But the cost wasn't practically just dying, it was 1 or 2 command spells. A risk, sure. A definite death sentence? Nope. The game just glosses over Hakuno's decision without caring too much about its implications or how it suddenly got reversed from before. Don't you think many people would have benefited a wish you just eternally denied them, idiot? Don't you remember how much this game tried to force feed me that this Mooncell Grill War isn't all that bad? People come here with their own decision until they don't and know the risks or whatever. Hakuno, despite being far better than self-insert Kun, still has the same basic problems you see in a blank slate character. It's much better with the inclusion of her monologues and thought process and actually having a good reason for fighting besides I'm the good guy so I help people, but this is what happens when you don't commit to writing a character. If her being a blank slate is supposed to make me feel more close to her, and I hate this asinine approach, then it's just backfiring now. She is not Commander Shepard or Nameless One which I can actually place myself as and basically self-insert. To establish certain characteristics for her certain conflicts and certain developments. Because if I was supposed to immerse myself in Hakuno, the ending completely f***ed up the immersion by the character doing something I didn't even think would be remotely in her character. And I wouldn't have done that either, so it's a lose-lose scenario. Such times are when extra being a JRPG causes problems because for an RPG there's barely any role-playing to do even when the story demands it. If this ending was simply one ending that could be chosen by the player, or even better, happened based on the story arc and development that Hakuno gets during the game, I would have been even praising it for that. But when it's a fixed ending, and one which I can't even reconcile with the majority of the game, then what the hell am I supposed to praise about it? Okay, the main story rant ended. Now we only have the optional and choice-based parts to discuss. Yeah, it sure isn't going to get lengthy. Okay, I guess it's time to talk about the heroines. Not that heroine. And not those two. These. It's not a secret to those who've come this far that I'm not the biggest fan of whoever the hell this is supposed to be. Because this isn't Rin. This is the most shallow caricature of Rin, which is more similar to what anime-onlys think Rin is than what Rin actually is. Being a tsundere with a level of sunsun more sunsun than any tsundere who has ever sunsuned. And her thighs. So let's talk about Ronnie instead. Might as well start with something positive, compared to this at least. Okay, $1 million question. The character is an artificial creation sheltered from most of the world, created for one purpose only. What story arc do you think she is gonna get? Go on. It's not that hard. Granted, Ronnie's arc is quite a well-known and also overused story, which practically marks a turning point in almost all homunculi storylines in Fate becoming a cliché factory. But despite all the negatives and lack of originality, this arc is relatively a well-done and well-written aspect of the story. Ronnie feeling angry at Hakuno for saving her is understandable since she lacks any kind of self-worth not given to her by her professor. That's why I think she would have preferred to just have died if she couldn't finish her mission. Hakuno took away both the chance for her victory and the chance for death from her. Her professor, fortunately, while probably not the greatest kind of guy because almost all magi are motherfucking disgusting assholes, wasn't a total caricature, jerk, like the other homunculi creators, and actually tried to teach Ronnie about how she might be able to learn what humanity and being human means. That's why she started helping Hakuno, for learning about humanity and possibly understanding her professor's words. Not. Ronnie at first doesn't even care much about Hakuno herself as a person, since she is completely unfazed by her being in danger because of her instructions. Learning about Hakuno's lack of memories and her being an artificial creation just like her links a sense of fellowship between the two, and Ronnie starts being more open and helpful to Hakuno until they grow to care about each other and Ronnie even starts expressing genuine emotions. Also, what the hell is up with her breasts being out? Her design is solid until you see that for whatever reason, she is showing her boobs. Is it just fan service, or is there some reason for it that I don't get, like the reason for Celtic servants being in tight suits? Anyway, at the end of the day, Ronnie's story is an overused trope of the artificial mind learning to be human, but it's well written enough, with the exception of some parts, to work well in the confines of the story. That's not something I can say about Rin in this game. Fate Extra is one of the first instances of Type Moon's nostalgia baiting. Adding Archer to the game and designing one character completely like Rin and pretending like she's Rin even when she's not and shouldn't have been, and no, I don't care about Rin's great granddaughter shtick. I mean, not all of it is annoying. The secret boss fight with Shiki is greatly appreciated. Taiga being Taiga even for a short while is also enjoyable for me. But these don't intrude on the main experience trying to remind you, look, it's Rin. Remember Rin? Sometimes they even put characters only previous fans of previous Type Moon works know, that neither teach you anything new about the characters nor exactly make the newer fans interested in the previous works. Maybe Archer would, but Arcade? Why give one potential servant place to a character you've already finished the story of? And on that note, Archer's story is also finished. I know these two aren't the exact same person canonically, but they're not too different from each other to make them different versions of the same character for me. If you've read Stay Night, which has the more fleshed out and complete story of Archer, there's barely anything new for you to learn about Archer other than being a nice add-on for Archer fans. And I am an Archer fan, but I'm not too sure about all the look-backs to the original story. But at least Archer is competently written, while Rin makes me want to gouge my eyes out. Surface level wise, she is Rin. She is aggressive towards the protagonist and is sundering the shit out of her role, which, while too extreme and approaching the level of caricaturization, is what people unfortunately consider Rin to be. At least it does give Rin vibes, which isn't some completely out of nowhere addition. That doesn't mean it's good though. But her suddenly being part of some anti-Harvey insurgent group? I'm sorry, Princess Leia, what the hell are you doing in Rin's skin? What part of Rin reads as a self-righteous rebellious hero wishing to destroy an evil overlord? It's funny how in the original, Rin was the one who said the opposite shit of Kirei and said you don't actually have to kill the opponent masters. Here, this bitch is defending the Mooncell Holy Grail War. Miss, you understand that the Mooncell is killing people it can just not kill? In the original Holy Grail War, killing the other masters is an advantage to the remaining masters in eliminating the risk of them making a comeback. What the hell is the benefit of killing people who've already lost and are out of the war? And for whose benefit is it? It's not a battle royale anymore. It's a tournament, so no comeback. You only get one chance and that's it. If you lose, the Mooncell can just kick you out. And even the story itself goes for Hakuno dismantling the Grail in the ending, saying that it's a meaningless, mindless bloodbath. So is the story actively trying to make Rin look stupid? And I had my fair share of shit talking the ending already. Rin being angry at Hakuno for saving her goes back and forth from hostility to confusion to hostility again to confusion and apathy again and so on. Well, sorry miss for saving your life. I didn't know I should have asked you first whether you want to get blown into pieces or not. Or are you that stupid to think that you could win? What the hell is your problem? What the f are you angry at and for what? It doesn't even have a consistent stream. She acts one way or the other in the time she is in the infirmary, changing moods quicker than even Beatrice. It's funny how much of this Rin Tosaka is not Rin Tosaka. Why not just make her another character then? It's as if rather than writing Ronnie, Nasu made Ronnie be Ilya and gave her the same character arc, backstory and role as Ronnie. Cool, that's all fair and game. There's just one teeny tiny little problem. That's not Ilya anymore! This character being Rin defeats the whole point of her being so different than Rin, and her being so different defeats the point of her being Rin. Anyway, I look at it, I still don't like it and fail to see any reason for this character being Rin other than, look, it's Rin! Remember Rin? Nostalgia factor. This character not being green wouldn't suddenly fix all her problems, but then at least she wouldn't have the shitty icing on the cake for being green. Okay, that got green really fast. Let's talk about the playable servants now. The biggest highlight of Fate Extra are the 3 main servants you can choose as companions. Even Archer, which I'm still confused about because, like I said, he's the only one who has basically no reason to be in the story, has his own interesting stuff going on. His reaction to many of the enemy masters and servants is, while quite expected, still really fun. And him shit-talking the crap out of Kawain is greatly appreciated. But I'm still conflicted on his inclusion. One reason Archer seems out of place in Extra is the greater emphasis on love in Nero and Tomomo's playthroughs, which are center stage of their respective character arcs. Their struggles with their form of expression of love and grappling with the tragedies that befell them in the path of love and life gets too integral to the progression of Hakuno and the story for me to just set aside when it comes to Archer. And no, I wouldn't have wanted some romance between Archer and Hakuno, because if Nasu ever thought of doing that, I'd tear apart his cap and throw his spores down to Tartarus. Archer is the only one who doesn't have much to do or much arc to go through, since he already has one somewhere else, so his changes only come off as a slow slope of warming up to Hakuno. Which isn't bad, but you can certainly see his acceptance of his past and all the other aspects of his character are more there with the expectation of the player already having read Stay Night than an actually new character. At the end of the day, he is like a bonus character for Stay Night and Archer fans, so I can't exactly fault Type Moon and Nasu for his inclusion. But I'm still not totally on board with whatever he's supposed to be doing for Extra itself and not for the original fans, since in his place we could have had another completely new and unique servant. Among the other servants, Nero and Tomomo, Nero is probably my favorite of the two, at least as of now. Though not by a long margin, Tomomo is great as well, and I don't understand the hate she sometimes gets. Nero is easily one of the best saber faces in the franchise. While her design is kind of a bait for Artoria fans, I can't say I'm too offended by that. Marketing is understandable as long as it doesn't obstruct the flow of the story and writing. At first, I really disliked Nero's design with it looking like it's overly horny baity, but over time I grew to appreciate it since it fits with her character and lore really well. The kind of overly confident, self-centered egotist that she is really fits with her flamboyant and theatrical design. As for
その衣装スカート透けてますよ。バカ者、透けているのではない、見せているのだ。涼しいぞ。うわー、すごい。後ろも半月だ。
Well, that fits well with the motive of her being called the whore of Babylon over and over again. Her narcissistic personality, unlike what one might expect, comes off as adorable, endearing, and sweet rather than annoying. Her attention-seeking and love-craving also fits extremely well with her backstory. Being treated like a political pawn by her own mother Agrippina and never being shown genuine and unconditional love. So she tries to compensate for that with garnering affection from her people, which, yeah, doesn't go well at all. Maybe being a beggar for attention and love from people you hardly know isn't really healthy. Just saying. It's a sad, beautiful, and bitter ending, but in the end, Nero stayed true to who she was. Her love for art and her inability to thrive in it is tragic. And while there are some things that I would have wanted to be explored a bit more, like her subjugation of that little cult you might have heard of, it's called Christianity. Overall, I really liked Nero's portrayal in Extra, and she grew on me over time despite my first introduction to her being from an utter garbage. Nero is, as of now, my favorite of the Extra characters, only slightly higher than Tomomo. Right, Tomomo. Nero, despite being quite a sweet ball of energy herself, pales in comparison to Tomomo, who makes almost every scene she is in into a fun circle jerk.
まずは金敵、次も金敵。懺悔しやがれ。これがとどめの金敵だ。
And I say that as a compliment for this one. Every word she says just oozes energy and manages to brighten the mood. And her design is great and fitting as well. She's probably the servant who shit-talks Kawain the least, since she can kinda understand where his unquestioning devotion comes from, which is a breath of fresh air compared to him always being trashed to oblivion. I certainly prefer him being trashed to oblivion because f*** this guy, but a change of pace isn't bad once in a while. Tomomo's backstory is also great, showing her struggles in understanding mortals and the eventual tragedy that befell her after becoming a mortal herself. Her desire to be loved and experience loving is genuine and well tuned with the themes of the story as well. Her backstory explains why she warms up to Hakuno so soon and is much more devoted to him or her. I'm personally not too on board with this approach in writing relationships, but I guess that's more a me problem only rather than me having a problem with the story itself because I think it's a mishap. I would have disliked her fawning over Hakuno greatly if it wasn't explained, but it was, so I won't whine about it too much. What I will whine about a lot is this. Tomomo's relationship with Twice is really lackluster and is just there. Twice himself barely has enough foreshadowing and presence for me to accept as the villain already, but Tomomo suddenly being revealed as Twice's previous servant is so out of nowhere I don't even know where to begin, because there's nowhere to begin. It isn't even much of a conflict for Tomomo, it just comes, Tomomo acts shocked, then clarifies that she doesn't give a shit anymore about Twice, then the story proceeds like Twice and Tomomo had never met each other. So then, why the hell add this detail? They could have easily not have been related and everything would have proceeded the same way. But overall, I like Tomomo as well. Fate Extra was an interesting experience I probably won't forget soon. It's the gateway to a new line of Fate content that I can't wait to see through. A new experience alongside the new characters I've grown to know over the past 80 hours. And a chance at seeing the characters I knew before in different lights. Many of the extra characters, as far as I know, are going to be in many of the other extra content, and I'm excited to see what Type Moon has done with this new storyline it has created. And who knows, maybe some of my problems with Extra have been fixed in the next entries. At the end of the day, I think Extra stands as a solid story in the Fate franchise and an Ultraverse. It has many good characters, a few great ones, many with extreme potential, and a few garbage ones. It has a solid main story despite its lackluster ending, and it has very interesting and well thought out themes distinct enough from the original timeline to make what it says fresh and new while not completely forgetting the ideas of the original. Too bad the themes fall flat on their face in the ending though. So overall, I'd say Extra, despite all my problems with it, is a solid entry into the franchise. Now we have to see where the other entries rank. Yep, definitely isn't going to take a long time. Speaking of long, okay, that got extremely long. How should I end the video? これがとどめの金貨